What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of the Brotherly Glove podcast, a podcast started by two brothers from Philly who we will take you into all things Philly sports week by week. The teams, the players, the coaches, the ups and downs, the drama, all of it. We will take you there. We've covered it all, been a part of it all, watched it all. 30 years of sports media experience between the two of us, and we happen to be brothers. So we appreciate you guys coming in for another episode, our first official launch. If you haven't listened to episode 0, the intro pod, to get a little bit more background, feel free to go download that. At the bottom here of our ticker, you can see all the places to follow us. Because you should be following us. It's an exciting time to talk all about Philly sports right now. We all know that the city of Philadelphia goes as the Eagles go, and they were victorious this past weekend, eking one out in Buffalo against the Bills 13-12. Josh Allen missed a wide open receiver on a 2-point conversion. And yes, there are plenty of things on the Eagles side of the ball to complain about when it comes to the offense. However, the defense really showed out in this one. It's probably the reason they are still a Super Bowl contender. It's definitely the most entertaining part of the game this past weekend. So I'm going to kick it off. Johnny Fisher, my brother. John, how are you doing? And what are your thoughts on the impact that this defense has had on this team recently?
I'm good, man. Last year everybody was excited because they were going into the Super Bowl or into the playoffs with the number one defense, and I don't think they're ranked number one. Maybe if you cut it down in the last 6 or 8 weeks, they are. I haven't checked those splits, but this defense looks like a championship defense. And the thing that stands out to me, I don't see a weakness, and I would have said early on, I think weakness, especially this last 8-year, let's say this 8-year run where they've gone to a couple of Super Bowls, the pass rush and the depth of the pass rush has been the hallmark. I think that's been overstated for the last couple of years, especially on the edge. They've gotten great pass rush from Jalen Carter, which to get something like that from a defensive tackle really is a bonus, I would say. But they've changed that with the Jalen Phillips trade and Brandon Graham's impact even in his limited snaps. So that was a move. Like, I was all for it, but I didn't think it was going to be any kind of game changer. But he's been great. And now and we saw how often they pressured Josh Allen the other day. It was over 40% or something. And they're 5th in the NFL in pressure rate this year. And I don't see a weakness. They've got a great cover corner. They've got a great slot corner who can be a cover corner. Their linebackers, when Kobe Dean's out, we saw what Jahad Campbell can do, the young guy. And the defensive line with the pass rush and the two Georgia Bulldogs in the middle, they're monsters. And I don't, as well as they're playing and as well coached as they are, I don't really see a weakness. It doesn't mean that they're perfect and that they're absolutely the number one defense, but this is a championship defense, and it sure looked like that in Buffalo against a Super Bowl contender on Sunday.
Yeah, and it's plenty of positives to take away from the defense overall. I mean, obviously Jalen Carter comes back and makes an immediate impact. He's the one who got up and blocked the extra point, if I'm not mistaken, which ends up being the difference in the game.
Yep.
One thing that's really been big for them recently is the development of Jalix Hunt. He has really been stepping it up as of late. I remember one of the big conversations after last year when you knew you were going to lose some guys on that defense was, who's going to step up in their place? And there wasn't an obvious answer, but the team felt good enough going into the year with what they had. Over his last 10 games, Hunt has 36 tackles, 19 quarterback hits, 2 interceptions, and 6.5 sacks. 2 of which came against Allen this past weekend. So you add in the development of Jalix Hunt, the acquiring of Phillips, as you mentioned, the return of Nakobe Dean, which is huge. Obviously, Bond finally getting his legs underneath him. Jalen Carter coming back and looking as good as he did, and this team once again looks like the dominant Super Bowl caliber defense that they had this past season as well. So health and development is going to be key for any team, and really, I think against a really strong Bills offense, you held them to a season low 12 points when they were averaging right around 29 points a game.
Yep.
Shutting them down in their own stadium. It's a pretty impressive look and pretty impressive victory based on the back of Vic Fangio and his defense.
Yeah, and they were bothering Allen all game. I'm pulling up Allen's numbers. I know I mentioned to you before. I think I said their blitz or their pressure rate was twice as high as their blitz rate. Yeah, they pressured him on 43% of his dropbacks. They only blitzed 21% of the time. And that's if you're getting that against a quarterback like that, their offense, they don't have a laundry list of playmakers there. But for Josh Allen can create, and he looked like he was under duress all day. And I thought this is really interesting. So Brady mentioned it. Yeah, he had a guy open in the 2-point conversion and he missed him. And he was floating left a little bit. And whether that was because of some pressure that was about to emerge or the pressure he was under all day. And Brady said it that when you're going left kind of the way he was, you can have a tendency to pull that ball, which is what he did. But I would give the credit to the pressure. And you mentioned it, Jalen Carter. I mean, he had a quick pressure where he has violent sacks and violent tackles. Like everything is like a collision with him. And he looked really fresh and refreshed yesterday. And he said that whatever he had gotten with his shoulders, he felt better. And if he's looking like that and they're getting this increased production from guys like Jalix Hunt and what Jalen Phillips has brought to the table, for him to block that extra point, him blocking that extra point is why they won the game. And if his continued pressure throughout the game or the concern that he was going to get there on that 2-point conversion makes Allen move and drift a little bit and pull the pass, that's like the two actually most meaningful things that determined win or loss in that game. So this defense looks awesome. And the fact that the pass rush has improved, and, I said all that I mentioned the linebackers being really good and Campbell being there if someone like Dean is out, but Zach Bond was all over the place again yesterday. And to have a guy like that, they've got a star on every level. And in some cases, they've got multiple stars on all 3 levels of that defense. It's for them to be coached that well with the star power they have and really just the viciousness and ferocity they all play with. This is a championship defense.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I think one thing that can really show how impressive the Eagles have been on the defensive side of the ball. One guy that a lot of people have complained about this season, Adoree Jackson. Another guy that people have complained about at times from Eagles fans' perspective is Marcus Epps. Getting those guys on the field a lot. You want to limit that. They have better players at different positions. And because you haven't seen them as much because you're playing to your strengths as much as you possibly can, the Bills went out of their strengths when it came to a game plan. They do a lot of heavy personnel, a lot of 13 personnel, 12 personnel, and they were doing a lot of 11, a lot of 21. They were avoiding their strengths, which are having those strong tight ends in the middle of in the middle of the field, and they were almost playing to the Eagles' defensive or perceived defensive weaknesses as opposed to playing towards their own strengths at times. They wanted Adoree Jackson on the field. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to interrupt you, but to be fair, they were missing Dalton Kincaid, which is a big piece for them. But you're right; they changed the way they were doing things,
and that's because of how effective it is. And you'd think that you can get in the minutia about maybe they don't have the wide receivers to play in that type of scheme, and even with Adoree Jackson or Keely Ringo's struggles, it's a little bit easier to have them on the field against a lesser caliber wide receiver core that the Bills seem to have right now. But even when Adoree Jackson was out there, he was making plays that you didn't see earlier in the season. So not only is it the results of the stars at every level, like you mentioned, it's other guys learning and adapting throughout the season, and Vic Fangio really getting those guys ready to go for when they are needed at a higher rate, like they were this past Sunday. They're coming up and making big plays, as we saw from Adoree Jackson on quite a few occasions. So to me, it goes beyond just the stars, and the beauty is that they have a star caliber player at every level when these other guys can come and make an impact in the biggest games, like Adoree Jackson did, like Ringo did, like Epps did this past weekend. And that's what separates a pretty good defense from a Super Bowl champion caliber defense.
Yeah, and during this 3-game win streak, they've allowed 0 points, 18 points, 12 points. That's 30 points, 10 points per game. And going back to that loss to the Giants when they lost 34-17 before the bye. That's 10 straight games allowing 24 or fewer. And not that 24 is a minuscule number, but that's, a lot of teams score a couple touchdowns in a game. You're almost at 24 if you do that. This defense is the reason that they've got the fifth best Super Bowl odds. It's certainly not the offense, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think the offense is the thing that's driving them there. That's for sure. Real quick, another thing that I've noticed the past couple weeks that's been a help for the Eagles is they have cut down on penalties significantly. In the 3-game losing streak prior to the 3-game winning streak they're currently on, Philly had 27 penalties across those 3 games. They've had 11 in the last 3 games. So huge, just being able to clean that up. And that's, say what you want about Sirianni, that is hard-nosed coaching, that is practicing, that is getting that discipline reinserted in your team during the week leading up to a big competition in that game up in Buffalo. So whether you like Sirianni or not, those things are what I like to see out of Sirianni. I like to see his fire. It's a little bit, sometimes it can be a little juvenile, if you will, yelling at fans as you're going up the tunnel as he did this past weekend. But getting your team to cut your penalties by more than half over a 3-week stretch is a pretty impressive thing for a head coach to be able to do, especially this late in the season with guys coming in and out of the lineup. So to be able to have some backups in there and it not cost you over these past 3 weeks, as it may have the 3 weeks before, is another reason why they feel like, even with the struggles on the offensive side, that they are in a rhythm at the moment.
Yeah, great call. And that was a big talking point. What was it, Dallas? They had like 14 penalties or something?
Yeah, the Dallas game was a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And, whatever impact Sirianni's having, I hope he's impacting that, because there's a lot of other places he could probably like to see some more impact, or at least some positive impact on this team. Yeah, the defense is championship level, but the offense is not. Let me run down a couple stats for you. And
let's get into it.
Yeah, people saw what happened on Sunday. I mean, yeah, holding a team with 12 points on the road like that is huge. 10 points per game during a 3-game win streak is awesome, but they only scored 13. And they punted on all 5 drives in the second half. The last 4 were 3 and outs before the kneel down at the end. They are 26th in the NFL in yards per play on first down. So they're not they're not doing themselves any favors. That gives them the second longest average distance to go on third down behind the Browns. And the 3 and outs, they have the highest 3 and out rate in the NFL. This is a team that's, what's their record? 11 and 4, 11 and 5. I can't do math, but 11 and 5.
11 and 5.
Fifth, what? Right now they're the 3 seed in the NFC. They have the 4th best Super Bowl odds, and they have the highest 3 and out rate in the National Football League. That's stunning, and I can't think of how those things. I mean, it's obvious that the defense has a huge part, but I just can't see being confident in a team going into a playoff run, especially when I mentioned they have the 4th best Super Bowl odds. 3 of them are in the 3 of the 4 teams ahead of them are in the NFC. The AFC feels wide open. The NFC's got maybe the stronger teams, or the ones that look stronger. I just can't understand, to go up against Seattle or the Rams going 3 and out in the entire second half. I don't know how that's going to work. Punt, kneel down. And you mentioned it. What was it? 18 plays for 18 yards, or
17 plays for 17 yards in the second half.
They didn't complete a pass. They were 0 for 8 passing. They had negative net passing yards thanks to sacks. And it's the second time they've done that this year, and somehow they've won both games.
Only one to do it.
And it really, I think the troubling part, it really seems like you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I did a Twitter thread about it, and starting with those stats, and then I was clued in by other people, some film people on Twitter, about the types of routes they're running, and they're not running a lot of crossing routes. They're running a lot of hitch routes, and there's video every week out there. And I should shout out. There's a guy, Eagles X's and O's, I think, who does some really cool stuff. Dennis Seldman was sending some stuff out this week. I am not a person who could draw up an offensive scheme, but a person who's an NFL offensive coordinator should be able to do it. And if that's the issue, I mean, I watched right before you and I were talking, I watched their 8 dropbacks, and there was, I mean, what I've seen people point out is like against a pretty predictable coverage from the Bills, they don't seem to have answers. There was a couple throwaways among those 8 dropbacks. One of them was Hurts made 2 miraculous plays to just avoid a sack. And I mean, one he slid and ended up taking a sack. It was, and I want to say, like, we're saying 0 for 8, right? And negative pass yards. I'm not even saying that to put it on Jalen Hurts. And what some of the smart people who I've come across their stuff on Twitter are saying, it's like, there's just, it's not schemed well. It's not on Jalen Hurts. It's not like he's necessarily missing guy. The plays aren't designed well. They're not developing well. The routes don't complement each other. And you've got these dropbacks, and there aren't options for him, or at least there aren't good ones, or things to get out of, or escape routes, or whatever you want to call it, all the terminology. Like, it just, from an untrained eye, it looks not just boring, it looks like unplanned. And you know me, I'm immediate pushback on people who are like the play callers and all kinds of stuff. I don't know what they're calling, right? We can't sit here for that. But a couple of those, they didn't pass the ball until 3rd down. So run, 1st and 2nd down, pass the ball on 3rd when everybody knows it. Their play calls aren't designed well enough. I don't know. This seems like football 101 to me stuff. And this is stuff that's been talked about for 6 weeks now by smart people out there. And I'm not saying, these are people on Twitter. I'm not saying that they're like the offensive coaching staff, but people like us, people like the smarter people who are sharing this stuff, can't be the only people spotting this stuff. And what's concerning to me is that the same complaints and the same observations are being made 6 weeks later, and we're now 2 weeks out from the playoffs. Like, watching that team take its foot off the gas. I don't know if they were trying to run the clock from the beginning of the 4th quarter. You can't do that against Josh Allen. I know they hadn't really scored until then, but man, two long drives at the end of the game, and the second one sure felt inevitable. And we mentioned it before. The only reason they win is because Jalen Carter's a monster and blocked an extra point. So I don't know what there is to do with this offense to get it right for 2 weeks from now. Do you?
No, and that's been the question all season. Like you said, I mean, there's nothing obvious to turn around and do. And my first question when the team struggled offensively was, hasn't this guy been here the last couple of years? Like, it's not like Patullo was an outside hire. Like, sure, you weren't the one drawing up the offensive scheme, but why not just look at what y'all did last year and keep doing it, right? Like, I know you want to put your own stamp on things, but you'd think that a guy who's been in the building would be able to continue with what had happened last year, especially when there had been so much up and down success when it came to the offense every year.
Yeah.
You can get into the offensive line struggles, and maybe some guys who they thought had developed, just it's a big enough of a step off, and Mailata dealing with injuries, and of course Lane Johnson being out. Like, everybody on the offensive line has a significant drop off as far as their PFF grades, except for Lane Johnson. I think he went from the number 1 while he played. Last year he was the number 1 right tackle. This year was the number 3 right tackle. Like, Mailata had dropped like 15 places. The center had fallen off significantly. So yeah, all that stuff matters. But when the scheme isn't conducive to allowing you to make up for those deficiencies, that's when you run into trouble. I remember talking to a reporter, and because this was off the record, I'm going to keep everybody nameless, but he had heard from people inside the locker room early in the season that they were frustrated that the practice playbook was this big and the game playbook was this big. And they're like, we're hoping that means we're going to open it up more as the season goes along. And for a little while, it did feel like that. I don't know what week it was directly, but you think about, when they started going the under center a little bit more and adding in those bootlegs. You even saw it in the first half against Buffalo, a lot of under center and bootlegs, and a lot of doing some creative things out of under center. It was successful in the first half. It was successful the last couple of weeks. Not a single one called in the second half. The RPOs that really started to work after they picked up kind of in week 6, week 7, none of that was called in the Buffalo game. run, third down hitch or a go ball. A lot of seemingly forced plays to AJ Brown, a lot of forced passes, it seems. And they're doing it, unfortunately, with them forcing a lot of passes. They're forcing things into, they're forcing themselves to do things that maybe aren't conducive for this offense. Even when they were performing well, the AJ Brown makes his money going across the middle, something that Jalen Hurts isn't necessarily the best at. You guys need to figure out how to put your guys in the best position. And you'd think that with the head coach being an offensive player and an offensive first play call or coach rather, and Patullo having been in the building, yes, it's his first time as a play caller. You'd think that those two minds combined, who have been with this team and brought out the success offensively that they've shown in the past few seasons, that they would be able to do that. And this late in the season, this still being a question, is not what you want for a team that could potentially be the 2 seed in the NFC, won the NFC East for the back-to-back for the first time in 20 years, and has Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned about Patullo being there and having some consistency and understanding of the systems and things. One thing I want to make clear, and I've been pointing this out for a long time, I'm a big believer in Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's the perfect quarterback, the perfect drop back passer. But he is now in his 10th season in college or the NFL. And obviously, if you would go back another year to 11 years since his senior year in high school, I don't know all of his high school coaching staff, but clearly his play caller his senior year of high school was not the same play caller he had his freshman year at Alabama. So he's had, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's had 11 different play callers in the last 11 years. The only time he's gone from, he's had the same play caller in back-to-back years was 2021 to 22, and it wasn't a full year. It was when Sirianni gave up play calling duty to Steichen halfway through the year, and then Steichen was the play caller the following year. But he had Lane Kiffin, and even this all started his freshman year. His freshman year play caller was Lane Kiffin. Nick Saban kicked him off the team or kicked him out before the national championship game. Jalen Hurts had, as a freshman in college in the national championship game, had a different play caller in that game than the whole year leading up to it. So this started that for him. They went with Steve Sarkisian. Then they had Brian Dable, Mike Loxley, Lincoln Riley while he was at his year at Alabama, and then Doug Peterson his rookie year, Sirianni and Steichen in 21, Steichen, Brian Johnson, Kellen Moore, and now Patullo. Like, if this is not, I don't know if he's given enough credit for that. Is what I would say. I can't imagine how hard it is to do that when we talk about the consistency among head coaches and coaching staffs and organizations. You see the dysfunctional ones that don't have it. I don't know if enough is made about this for this guy, what he's had to go through, not just in his time with the Eagles, but going back, I mean, literally his whole college and professional career.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. What you just mentioned is my go-to defense for Jalen Hurts. And it's funny to me when you hear people outside of Philadelphia refer to him as a system quarterback.
What system?
That's what I was going to say. I don't think people know what that means. They hear A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, strong offensive line. Oh, that's the system. No, the system is they have Jalen effing Hurts. That's the system. Like,
maybe he's a system quarterback if you mean he's played in every system imaginable.
Yeah, he's covered every system in existence since he started playing football, and he's won in all of them. Let's not leave that part out of it.
Like, yeah, he's not like a system creation. I point that out to me the next time somebody.
Yeah, I will. To me, like, to put it that bluntly, he's not a system quarterback. He's the system. That's the way I've kind of generically summed it up. It's like he's a dude who goes out there and wins, and he has at least above average play in every aspect you want out of a quarterback in today's NFL. He can do it all. It might not be as consistent as whoever you would put in that elite category, but he's a upper echelon quarterback who is going to make game-winning plays when you need them in crunch time. He's proved it time and time again, and you hope that the offensive coordinator is not going to be the thing that gets in the way of allowing him to do that come the postseason.
This is another thing I keep track of, and I just did a little bit of math to to update it. So as Jalen Hurts as a full-time starter, he had that year where Tua Tagovailoa came in the SEC championship game, and then Tua took over the following year, and he wasn't a full-time starter his rookie year with the Eagles. But as a full-time starter in college and the NFL, he had 2 years at Alabama, 1 year at Oklahoma. This is now his 5th year as a full-time starter with the Eagles. That's 8 seasons, made the playoff all 8 years. His record as a full-time, when he's a full-time starter, not thrown in, do a little bit here, pick up the slack, whatever, 99-29. That's a winning percentage over 77%.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, 8 playoff appearances in 8 seasons. That includes the smaller college football playoff that he reached all 3 years as a starter. He went to 2 national title games, 2 Super Bowls. He had a top 2 finish in the Heisman voting and a top 2 finish in the MVP voting. And now this is, they've made the playoffs again, and he's 1 win away from his 100th win as a starter as a full-time starter in 8 years. Again, no quarterback's perfect, and there's stuff that he does better than other things, and there's certainly things that other quarterbacks do better than him, but he's not the problem. I know that. So all these things about no completions, negative net passing yards in the second half, and all that stuff, I don't know. I mean, he was 0 for 8, right? Or over 7, 0 for 8. He had 2 great plays, one gaining positive yards, one still took a sack, but avoided a sack in the end zone. He also had that Devontae Smith play that probably should have stayed a catch.
Yeah.
And then his last incompletion was a rifle on 3rd and 6 that went through Smith's hands. And I'm not blaming Smith for that, but yeah, they've got a guy that they can win with. And, you mentioned it too I've tried to talk to my friends about let's back this thing down. That was a really, really good offense that was clicking on all cylinders last year. There is decreased offensive line play this year. And for a bunch of different reasons. Mailata has not been as good. And I don't know if that's because it's hard to be as good as he was. He was really, really good. Lane Johnson is always that good, and he hasn't been around much. Mekhi Becton is gone, and they haven't replaced him perfectly. Landon Dickerson's been in and out with injury. Most teams
Cam Jurgens is not playing well at all either. I mean, there's
right. And look, a lot of teams go through that quite often. That's fine. I think so. Hopefully, I've tried to talk to some of my friends. I don't know if we came into this season thinking this Eagles team going forward is the Eagles team we just saw dismantle the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and dismantle the Commanders in the NFC. Would they score 100 points or
between the 2 games?
Yeah, in the 2 games to finish the season in the Super Bowl title. I think if there were expectations that was going to go for the 18 games, 18 weeks this year in the playoffs again, that's foolish. But there have to be improvements that can be made. I just don't know. I mean, at this point in the game, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, could you do something extreme like sit Jurgens and play Brett Toth in the playoffs at center? I mean, that would be an extreme move, but you've seen him there before. Could you just open up last year's playbook, and even though we haven't practiced it, screw it, let's throw some shit at the wall and see what sticks? One thing that I think doesn't help the creativity and explosiveness of guys doesn't help with the creativity and explosiveness of guys like AJ and Smith and Hurts is when you become too predictable. I remember having a nice conversation with some people about I'm always curious what people thought about teams that I watched growing up, and I was curious about what people thought about Donovan McNabb, and I had the pleasure of bumping into Rondé Barber a few weeks ago. Old corner for the Buccaneers, the team that beat the Eagles and eventually went on to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you were young, but Philadelphia sports fans know Rondé Barber. Okay?
Yeah. So Rondé Barber, it's funny. He even laughed when he found out I was from Philly. He was like, "Why do y'all hate me so much? My brother played for the Giants. Why do you hate me so much?" And I was like, "Well, because of that play." He talked to me about Andy was extremely creative at making what he thought was a predictable offense result-wise not look predictable pre-snap. But one thing he told me was that once you figure all that out, it becomes very predictable. So it didn't matter about the motions, about the disguises. The end result was typically the same. And he said everybody else seemed to be startled by the creativity and the way that they hid things, but he studied the way that McNabb played and what the end result was, and he felt they became predictable, which is why he felt so prepared in that NFC Championship game. Well, I know that that's a lot of details, and maybe it's a little look at me for having a conversation with the guy, but the main thing that he talked about was how predictable they felt to him as an elite defender. Well, let's talk about predictability. We talked about the hitch routes and kind of joked about that earlier. In the second half, Eagles have run 25.3% of their plays have been hitch routes in the second half of games, not just on third downs. Overall, according to True Media, 25.3%. No other team, that includes terrible offenses and predictable offenses, no other team has over 20% in the second half running hitch routes. So this team that's supposed to be an elite caliber team is an extremely predictable second half team. And defenses are picking up on that.
And that seems like a very conservative. And to me, that actually, this makes sense because it matches up with, we've heard Nick and Jalen Hurts talk about how important it is. I mean, they do a really good job of not turning the ball over. And it seemed to be a true concerted effort to have him not put the ball in harm's way when he throws it. And it's worked, obviously, and it's worked in the turnover department. But I think it's all part of like an overall just safe and unaggressive mindset that I'm worried is going to be their downfall in a big game. And Eagles Eric, did you mention him? I mentioned it before. Eagles X's and O's. That's Eagles Eric is the name, and the Twitter handle is Eagles X's and O's. He's the guy that first turned me on to it a few weeks ago. When I looked at it back then, this was end of November, like Thanksgiving week. They ran hitch routes and you said second half. They run hitch routes at a higher rate than any team in the NFL, almost 30% of their routes at the time. And that would be the highest of any team in the NFL over the last 8 seasons. Now, there's some good teams. I also noted the 2023 Ravens were number 2 on that list. They were 13-4, and Lamar Jackson won the MVP while they were running their offense that way. Last year's Eagles were number 7. The 2023 Eagles were number 8. So it's not just Patullo. There's some, but like what smarter people have pointed out is how those routes complement other routes and when they're called and why they're called and how they're used. And to go away from the hitch routes, they run crossing routes. Again, this is a month ago at the 3rd lowest rate in the NFL. And I just grouped it. So I was sorting that regardless what the number is. The teams at the bottom of that list were the Bengals, the Falcons, the Eagles, the Steelers, and the Saints. The teams at the top of that list were the Lions, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Bills, and the Colts. Which one of those groups would you rather be in?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, do you want to be mentioned with the Saints, Falcons, and Steelers offensively? I know the Steelers have a chance at the playoffs and the Falcons have been better. But, like, no, the group of teams you want to be like are the Lions, Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, Bills, and Colts. It's, again, I don't have the answer because I'm not a play designer. I'm not an NFL offensive coordinator, but like the fact that they can't seem to fix this is concerning going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and Nick even decided to step in and help a little bit more with game planning. That helped end their 3-game losing streak. But then some of the things that you saw that you felt were wrinkles that were being added weren't necessarily there all game. And weather only really played a major part in the. I mean, it was there. It was present all game, but it seemed to play a bigger part in the first half. So to be so mundane in the second half just feels like, like you said, maybe they were looking to just, hey, let's bleed this thing while we have a lead and see what we can do. And that is a safer way of playing ball, especially when you have this really stout defense on the other end. But how many times are you going to pass the buck to the defense in the second half and say, hey, go win us this game? We're just going to do the bare minimum.
Yeah, I mean, you can be safe and you can be smart without being conservative and taking all your aggression away. They haven't found that balance, and it wasn't like this last year. One thing before we look ahead, I want to throw out. There was, I think AJ Brown's target share and happiness is a favorite conversation of Eagles fans week to week. But one thing I thought of, and Eagles fans, like, I think sometimes people disagree with Brown that maybe he's starting trouble and there doesn't need to be any. But a lot of times people agree too that, hey, he's our star wide receiver. Why aren't we throwing him the ball, right? So even if it's maybe not always done the way people want, there's some validity to it. I think he gets a lot of people who are thinking the same way. But I was just curious, and then I looked at it, and it kind of backed it up. They also have another star wide receiver on their team, and I don't hear a lot of people screaming, do they throw Devontae Smith the ball enough? Now, maybe that's because Devontae Smith doesn't talk about it the way A.J. Brown does, or talk about it, or put on a show or whatever he does. But Devontae Smith is a guy who had 8 touchdowns last year, over 1,000 yards each of the previous 2 seasons, and over 900 yards as a rookie. His season numbers are going to look good. He's played in every game. 74 catches for 956. He's just 44 away from 1,000-yard season. But in his last 7 games, he has 26 catches, 299 yards, and 1 touchdown. Not to go all numbers, but 1 touchdown reception in his last 7 games. That's not even an average of 4 catches or 45 yards per game. And look, I'm not saying Smith is doing anything wrong. They had that ball that was overturned on Sunday that would have added yards, all this stuff. Like, I don't think he's being ignored, but I think it also goes with this conservative nature that if you're backing down, they have weapons. I can't believe they're not thinking, how do we not just open this thing up and let this thing hum? And with Saquon, with all these different guys and spread it around, when they only run however many 18 plays in the second half because they're being conservative, you're absolutely. I think of it this way. You ever been there, whatever sport it is, when you're like the other team does something, either the manager or the coach makes a decision or a player makes a decision, and you think, oh, I'm glad they did that. And not that you should think that, like, I should make decisions based on what the opposing fan base would think, right? But, like, if I were another team and the Eagles are playing really slow and not targeting all these weapons they have, I'd be thinking, thank God.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know. AJ Brown is all the talk, and Saquon coming down from a 2,000-yard season. And we've pointed. I think we've said enough on it about the offensive line not being as good. There's got to be recalibration of expectations at some point. But I don't know. Devontae Smith is a game breaker, and I worry and wonder if they're using him right too. I think there's things to do even within the current setup of the offense.
Yeah, I think the priority in the offseason, besides adding O-line and D-line depth like it is every year, is getting someone who knows how to put an offense together. I think that if they come into next year with, hey, let's give Kevin Patullo another shot, regardless of the results at the end of the year, I think you're looking at a lot of questions that still need to be answered. So.
Yeah,
it's not inspiring, but nonetheless, they are still in the position that they are in with a chance to potentially get the 2 seed. So before we move on to other sports, John, I want to ask you your thoughts. They have a chance, last year with a chance to set a rushing record, decided to sit their starters in the last week. Not as much impact on the standings this year. With a victory and a Bears loss in Week 18, the Eagles would move up to the 2 seed, currently in the 3 seed. The biggest difference between the two, just on the surface level, is you're 1 loss away from the 1 seed from hosting the entirety of the NFC playoffs. That's what happened. Was it last year or the year prior it was last year, right? Lions lost early and they were able to host the rest of the way.
Yep. So the championship game and won the Super Bowl.
There's an argument to be made that 2 seed, because of that reason, is valuable. But the rest and the health of the team is just as valuable. So I'll toss it over to you. What are your thoughts on the approach for Week 18? Should they start the guys or should they sit them?
They should go for it. I want them to go for the 2 seed. I also want them to actually try and win this game and do some of the stuff we're talking. I think they need to put, like, the offense needs to be tested and they need to try some things. And I don't mean like tricky stuff, but yeah, they need to go out there to play, not to not to. I understand it. Obviously, if someone gets hurt, you don't want that. But I think the 2 seed is valuable for the reasons you said. We saw it last year. I say go for it because it's also. I mean, if you look at the schedule, it's not crazy. It's very the Washington's on their third quarterback, and the Lions, even though they're not going to the playoffs, are still a dangerous team. I think it's very plausible that the Eagles win, the Bears lose, and you also have the added benefit of things can fall differently. But I mean, right now, I'd rather be playing the Packers in the first round as the 2 seed than I would be playing the Rams as the 3 seed.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think that NFC West, the more you can stay away from that in the first round, I think that's the best decision for the Eagles. I'd almost be willing to put the offense out there to start and maybe be comfortable with giving your defensive starters a little bit more rest. I'm not saying sit them the whole game, but be willing to give your backups on defense a little bit more and really just explore the space offensively and see what you can get gelling before the postseason. Obviously, you don't want to sit your guys or say you're going to sit your guys on defense if the game starts to get away from you. You don't want them to come in cold and try and rescue something. So you can start them, but be willing to give them a little bit more of a reprieve early on. See how the game goes, and if you have it in hand, then you can start talking about resting people. But I agree with you. This offense needs to show themselves something. They don't owe me anything, but they need to show themselves a little bit something else before they go into this top tier competition in the NFC playoffs.
I agree. I like what you said. Explore the space. We need to get a cowbell.
Yeah,
we need to get a Christopher Walken cowbell.
Add it to the list.
Button. Yeah, no, you're right, and I think you said it perfectly. And not that they need to prove something to themselves, but like I hope they're thinking like this isn't good enough. Like what they need a plan of attack, and it can't be the current one. And just I guess all we can do as fans, we're all complaining about it, is that we hope that they're at the drawing board as much as we want them to be.
Definitely agree. Well, hopefully the Eagles coaches and players are in the lab doing what they can with a pen and a pad trying to get this damn offense off the ground. However, other teams in Philly not having that same problem. Before we get into it, just thank you guys for watching. You are listening to the Brotherly Glove podcast here, hosted by myself, Kyle Fisher, and of course, my big brother, Johnny Fisher. 30 years of sports media experience between the two of us. So you may not know us, but get used to us because we're here to stay and give you all the greatest and latest takes on the.
And just as importantly, 80 combined years of Philly sports fandom.
Let's not forget that 80 combined years and some inherited years from generations past, if you will. So a lot of passion going into this one for you guys. Before we go over to the Phillies and their latest news, to touch on some of the other hometown teams, the Matvey Michkov-led Flyers, they are at the midway point, currently in a playoff spot. Some bright spots there, a young coach, young team overall, a lot of development there. Make sure you keep a close eye on them. They are currently in a playoff spot with a lot of promising players coming up the pike. We'll make sure to go in depth on them over the next couple weeks. The 76ers started out real hot, currently 16-14, 7 seed in the playoffs. A lot of questions about whether the Stars can really get things done and stay healthy the entire season. Paul George and Joel Embiid, what they look like with those two and Tyrese Maxey on the court, but Maxey leading the way. One of the best scorers in the NBA right now. If you haven't been locked in and you're looking for something to do before it gets closer to the playoffs, do yourself a favor and check out this young, revamped Sixers roster. They are exciting week in and week out, and there is plenty of drama, if that's your thing, with the veterans and dealing with their injuries in George and Embiid. So plenty to talk about when it comes to Philly sports.
Maxey third in the NBA in scoring behind Luka Doncic and SGA.
Oh, yeah. It's super impressive, and I give a lot of credit to the James Harden era for the evolution of Tyrese Maxey. So,
all right, yeah, can't wait to unpack that.
We'll definitely get into it in a future episode. But the most exciting news at the moment in Philly, if you're not a diehard Sixers or Flyers fan, is the Phillies and what they've done in the offseason. After a 96-win season, winning another National League East Division title, they were bounced in the first round by the Los Angeles Dodgers, who eventually went on to win the World Series. Phillies did a great job of keeping the all-star Shohei Ohtani in check. Didn't do a lot of offensive damage themselves, so they went into the offseason looking for a little bit of juice, looking to revamp the roster a little bit. Johnny, before we get into what they've done in the offseason, just want to touch on it briefly because it just came up. Harper posted a video of him taking hacks this week. I think it was yesterday or this morning. And he was wearing a shirt that simply said, "Not elite," as he took his hacks. Of course, referencing the post-season press conference from David Dombrowski, where he said this was not an elite, typical Bryce Harper elite season, and only time will be able to tell if he is truly that elite player once again. So what do you think about the little message there from Bryce Harper, whether it's a message for himself or a message for others with the not elite shirt?
I love it. I will take an angry and healthy Bryce Harper this year. Would be awesome.
Hell yeah. Couldn't agree more. One of the things I said on my other show, Alley Talk, over on Philly Sports Network last week was that, and we'll talk about him first. They signed Adolis Garcia, outfielder from the Texas Rangers, who was non-tendered this offseason. They signed him as a stopgap. He'll be the everyday right fielder, at least to start the season. And one of the things I mentioned was that he brings a fire that this club hasn't seen in a couple of years. A lot of their leaders are the silent leader type, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Zach Wheeler, and Aaron Nola. Those guys are all silent. Harper has started to grow out of that, it seems. He's not as fiery as he once was when they first brought him in, or at least that's what it feels like at times. You don't see as many animated pictures and videos of him screaming and yelling and getting everybody hyped. That's something that Garcia does bring. However, there are plenty of questions about him being a viable replacement in right field for a guy that everybody seems to be tired of in the fan base, at least, and Nick Castellanos. So, John, we'll start there. What are your thoughts on the Phillies bringing in another stopgap outfielder and Adolis Garcia? We'll talk about the bad first with the numbers, how they compare to Nick, but then let's talk some good about what that guy brings when it comes to his passion.
Well, so I liked it. I think in the constant search for right-handed power, that's today's MLB, which is strange. Righties used to be everywhere, and corner guys that can mash used to be everywhere. So in this constant search for right-handed power, I like it. He's a guy who's out there, 1 year, $10 million. Same that Max Kepler got. I love those kinds of flyers. But when Dombrowski seemed to say that was going to be it, I think it's a nice little ad and a nice little flyer to take on a guy. But is an outfield of – so if we take him at his word, let's say that seems to indicate the outfield would be Brandon Marsh, Justin Crawford, and – Garcia.
Yep.
Otto Kemp maybe mixed
as
in
a
there.
Platoon partner for Marsh.
Yeah, righty-lefty matchup type thing. And whether that's Crawford and left or center, it seems like they've tried to improve on Marsh or give him a platoon partner. There's been questions about whether Crawford is a center fielder or just a left fielder. And to bring in Garcia, who I don't know, maybe you're right about his passion and loudness, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think that Brandon Marsh, Crawford, and Garcia is better than what they were doing in left field, Bader and Castellanos at the end of last year. So if the move on its own, I don't mind it. But if that fixes the outfield, and the way I look at it is, like you said, I'm not necessarily tired of Castellanos. It seems like maybe he is ready to move on here, and if the Phillies are willing to try to improve on him, but I don't see it as an improvement, first of all. So to me, it actually looks like if they're willing to eat money and move off of Nick, and the replacement is this guy, what's the improvement? This feels like it's now $30 million for Garcia.
Kind of feels that way.
Castellanos to ship him off for whatever someone will give back, and $10 million on a flyer. Unless I'm missing something, I'd rather pay Castellanos $20 million than spend $30 million to downgrade.
Yeah, it's there are definitely concerns when it comes to his offensive profile. If you did not like the fact that Nick Castellanos was a swing and miss guy, get ready to curse at the screen every time you see Adolis Garcia in the middle of that lineup. Yep. Because if there's anybody who was on par with him as far as swing and miss, it's this guy.
Now, I threw a couple things together over the past 2 seasons, too, to try not to just isolate what happened last year. On-base percentage, Castellanos 303, Garcia 278. Slugging was about 20 points higher. Strikeout rate, Garcia's was higher. Walk rate was about the same. Now, he does hit the ball harder. His average exit velo and how often he hits the ball more than 95% or 95 miles per hour coming off his bat. And his chase rate's down, but his swing and miss rate's a little bit higher, which when you've got some of these numbers are small and minuscule, right? But like the chase rate is 5 percentage points lower while the miss rate's still higher. He's chasing less. We know that's Castellanos' problem, but he still swings and misses more often. I mean, the only thing he's better at is defensive, right? And we know Castellanos is one of the worst. If you look at the last 2 years, outs above average, according to StatCast, Castellanos is -20. He was the worst among outfielders. Garcia is -11. -11 is still not good, but that's also Castellanos is tied for worst, -12 last year. Garcia, I believe, was a +1 last year. He was a -12 the year before. So I've heard it that Garcia is supposed to be a much better outfielder, and I think if you subscribe to Castellanos is probably not a good outfielder and maybe one of the worst outfielders in baseball, then sure, most guys will be an improvement, but the numbers don't say that Garcia is that much better anyway. So I don't know. I don't get this as hey, we're willing to eat the money and take back whatever we can get or nothing, which again, this is just reports. Who knows how this is going to play out. But if they're going to pay 20, we're paying Castellanos either way, right? If they just kind of ship him off and they throw 10 million at this guy, I don't even know are they going to get worse production for more money? I don't see what they've solved here.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I think
I'm turning the light off because the sun's going down.
Okay. The 20 million does feel like I think they're just treating it like a sunk cost, right? I know that you do have to factor it in because it is part of the conversation, because it does become 30 million for a right fielder, whether Nick plays on the team or not, right? You're paying 30 million for a spot where you have two of the worst offensive profiles between the two guys. You talk about last season, there was 123 qualified outfielders offensively, and Garcia had the worst on-base percentage of all of them. Now, I know that's 1 year, but you talked about the 2 year. Just last year, he had the worst on-base percentage of all of them. On the defensive side, I think it depends on what defensive metrics you look at. I know he was dealing with injuries 2 years ago, so that -11 may have, or -12 rather, may have been greatly impacted by the injuries. A little bit healthier last season. He gets the +1. Looking just at last year, Garcia had 16 defensive runs saved, which was the most of all right fielders in the majors. Okay. Castellanos had -11 defensive runs saved, the worst of all right fielders. So you talk about, if that is your stat of choice, you're talking about a significant swing. And I think that if that is the thing that is the biggest focus, it's a big jump defensively, and we will figure it out offensively with him and Kevin Long getting in the lab, then you can rest your laurels on that. And it should also help Crawford adjust to being a center fielder, at least to start the year, right? If you have a strong right fielder, and Brandon Marsh has shown at times that he can be a damn near Gold Glove caliber left fielder, then you have studs in the corners and a great athlete in center. It should help. We'll have to see what kind of work Crawford puts in, but we know the kind of work that his dad put in for all those years. So if he got half that work ethic, it should be good out there. And the one thing that I do like about, so he did his welcome press conference, or his introductory press conference, and Garcia, that is, mentioned specifically that he feels his issue is approach more than anything, and his goal, regardless of where he ended up, was to fix his approach. And the Phillies agreed. They feel like the approach is the issue more than diminished skills. And one thing that I really wanted to harp on is, we talked about this during the season last year, but remember early on when Nick's slash line looked really good, right? And they talked about their entire focus in the offseason was cut down on the swing and miss, be more patient, be more selective at the plate. Nick Castellanos, through the first 2 months of the season, was on pace for the best on-base percentage he's had, I think, ever, or maybe outside of that last season he had with Cincinnati, where he earned the $100 million contract. He had ticked up despite his free swinging abilities. And Bohm had ticked up in on-base percentage, and Stott had ticked up in on-base percentage, and Harper had ticked up even if the power wasn't there, and Trey reimagined his game. So I think there's some hope in there that they were able to cut down on swing and miss and increase patience at the plate last year as a unit. And if Garcia's open to feedback, I think they're going to lean on, look, yes, it's a flyer, but it's a flyer that we have to take because we think there's more juice to squeeze out of this one than there is running it back with Nick, who's disgruntled on and off the field.
I hope you're right. I mean, to me, this doesn't look like an improvement. It looks like, and they tried in center field all year. So, but I'm talking more about the end, and hopefully the defensive improvement is enough to outweigh what I think is, at the very least, just a wash offensively.
Yep, I agree. But definitely not the only thing that they made. Only moves that they've made, rather. They did re-sign Kyle Schwarber, bringing back the heart of that order, if you will, the guy who was charged with protecting Bryce Harper last year and did more than enough. We'll see where his spot in the lineup ends up being this coming season.
Which I told you before, that's my number one priority. So I didn't think they could do anything else before they lock that up.
Yeah, I think it's you go Kyle and you figure the rest out, regardless of how long that took. I think that was the move. They do still have their two other big free agents in JT Realmuto and Ranger Suarez are both out there. All signs indicate that they're just waiting on JT to come back with either feedback on their offer or whatever the case may be. There's some rumors that maybe he feels a little slighted after the last time they went through this process. So I don't know what that means as far as demands or concerns on his end, but they seem really focused on him. And then all signs seem to indicate that they won't be bringing back Ranger Suarez. I haven't even seen the latest rumors on him, but there's plenty of pitching hungry teams where even if they wanted to check in with him, I'm sure that he's going to cost a lot of money. So without being able to address the starting rotation like they might have with Ranger Suarez being out, they did go for a full revamp on the bullpen so far. We know that they brought in Duran, the ever coveted closer that they were looking for the last few seasons on 1-year flyers. They go out and get Duran, who has a few years of control. But then they made some other moves, John. So let's dive into the moves that they made. They added a bunch of right-handers to kind of get the back end solidified. They traded away a staunch lefty in Matt Strahm. How are you feeling about those moves that they made in the back end of the bullpen?
I mean, I look at it like essentially they turned Matt Strahm and his 1 year, $7.5 million left on his contract into Brad Keller, who they signed as a free agent, and Bolin, who they got back for Strahm, who's making a lot less and is younger. So it's essentially exchanging Strahm for Keller, right? And I know people love Strahm. I'm a fan of the guy too. But I'm not saying this like I think they should have traded him or needed to trade him or anything like that. But when you looked into it, I think that's the kind of guy you do trade, especially if there's value to be had, value coming back. And if the value is just, in the salary relief to be used elsewhere, then I think it's worth it. And just a quick rundown of what I saw, and I know you and others have said this, a bunch of this stuff. His ERA was up by a run. His K rate was down. His walk rate was up. His ground ball rate was down. His fly ball and line drive rate were up. His chase rate was up, but his swing and miss rate was down. And that's in part due to him losing a full mile per hour on his average fastball velocity. So, and that's a guy that's 34 years old. He's been very effective, and I'm not predicting a career-ending implosion this year with all those things said. But if there's value for that, I think that guy becoming Brad Keller, I think that's an improvement. If you look at just that one, obviously righty lefty, and they could be used differently or whatever. But I think Brad Keller's a step up from Matt Strahm, and if they've got the money to do it, then I like it.
Yeah, I think it was a solid move. Like you said, I liked Matt Strahm. I know he's been one of the most effective left-handers in the league since coming to Philly. An ERA under 3 over the past 3 seasons. He's he became kind of the leader and the de facto go-to guy in the bullpen. I spoke to him quite a few times down at the ballpark this past season. He's a super entertaining guy. I got to tell you that. I mean, you see how he is on the field. That's not what he's like off the field at all. He's way more happy-go-lucky. I've even asked him about that in the past, and he gives some funny answers about that. We did it off the record, so I won't give all the details here. But he's talked about it in the past, so I wouldn't be revealing anything that hasn't been said before. The big thing to me that I've noticed, and doesn't matter how good these bullpen guys were the past few seasons, whether it's Kerkering, whether it was Jeff Hoffman, now Duran, now Strom, all these high leverage guys seem to be getting beat by the long ball at times. And this felt more like, you want to talk about, there was rumors from Matt Gelb that they felt like he had that maybe the Strom's attitude had become a problem in the clubhouse. And when you partner that with the issue that they want to move on from Nick, maybe they're trying to clean house a little bit of quote unquote problems. I'm not getting into all that. To me, it looked like they traded from a place of strength because that has value, and they got long-term value back, right? They got the money that they were able to spend on Keller. They got Bolin, who, while he doesn't have any options, he has like 5 years of team control, inexpensive team control left. I think he's 2 years pre-arb still. So you have a lot of time to get that guy to where you want him. And the big thing for me is they took a fly ball heavy bullpen and turned it into a ground ball heavy bullpen.
Yep. And that was the big thing. We know Duran throws 100 miles an hour, but he also doesn't give up fly balls. He's got that splitter, whatever, that goes 100 miles an hour that keeps the ball on the ground. If you can target that and you can build your bullpen, of course that's desirable. And if that's the moves they're making here, then I think these are almost no brainers.
Yeah, man. It's like I'm not going to get too in depth on it, but Bolin had a 49.1% ground ball rate last year, third best among rookie relievers. I believe Keller has a 55 or 56% ground ball rate. By the way, if you want to be impressed by a dude that you've never heard of before, if you didn't know who Brad Keller was before this season or this signing, just open his Baseball Savant page. Look at how bright red it is.
Yeah.
It's super impressive. And the cool thing about him is that a lot of guys, when they transition from starter to reliever, cut their repertoire in half. And he has kept that full 5-pitch starter repertoire. So to go with his fastball, he goes sweeper and sinker heavy against righties. And then he has a slider and a changeup that he uses a lot against lefties to keep them off balance as well. That 4-seamer that's ticked up, I think, over 3 miles an hour since the transition to the bullpen was huge. The one thing that I would caution people is that bullpen transitions are volatile year to year, especially in the early sense of that transition. If you go look at like Matt Strom's early numbers when he was playing between starter and reliever, his numbers were not nearly as good as they were the last 3 seasons with the Phillies. Keller, last year, it was his first full year as a reliever. So if there's some bumps in the road early on, don't be surprised. But the things that guy did last year for a competitive Cubs team should have you excited as a Phillies fan, regardless of how you felt about Matt Strom.
Yeah, and he pitched 5 times in the playoffs last year, only allowed 1 run. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say it off of just 1 year, but I mean, it was a full year of a 2.07 ERA and 68 appearances, and 5 effective playoff appearances for a good team. I'm ready to roll with this guy. It sounds great.
And Brad, if I'm not mistaken, you just said that he had the 1 run in the playoffs in 5 appearances, right?
Yeah.
I think, and I'm double checking right now, so bear with me, but I believe he only allowed 1 run in the entire second half of the regular season last year. I mean, when the going got tough, that guy just turned it on. So yeah, that's a guy that I want in my clubhouse. I mentioned briefly that Strom kind of became the elder statesman and the leader out in the bullpen. So I did ask during the press conference that the Phillies held with media for announcing that deal. The trade was, I asked him specifically, Matt Strom was the leader back there, especially for the young guys. Banks spoke heavily about him. Kerkering spoke heavily about the support that he gave them off the field. Who's going to replace that, right? That is an invaluable thing that we talked about a lot with the Kyle Schwarber re-signing. Is for as good as he is on the field, he brings so much to that clubhouse off the field. Who's going to be that guy? And he didn't seem too concerned about it, but he didn't have an answer either. He said, look, we have veterans back there. and we're not done making moves. So one of those guys is just going to have to step up and be in that role. And
Yeah.
some of the younger guys are now veterans. So like these guys they should take what they learned from Matt and be able to apply that to each other and help each other out back there. So it was something that I felt had to be asked. It wasn't a major concern of mine, and the team felt similarly.
So let me ask you, and I'll two-part to try to wrap this. Like, I know when you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, I think on your Alley Talk show, I said the priority for me was Schwarber. You said Real Muto. Nothing's happened yet. These are like some of these are decent size moves, but nothing humongous, which is fine. I think we got used to a little bit of that the last 2 years of the Phillies. But there's also, we mentioned it too. I mean, whether they make moves or not, we're not sure until it happens. There's all this talk about Bohm and Stott and all these guys being in play. But they also do have guys under team control at every position, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't think there are that many, unless they make maneuvers in some of these spots. There's not a lot of holes to fill. I think you and I have said, whether you agree as much as me or not, but like, I think there's a lot of improvements to be made, if not holes to fill. But so the Garcia, if that settles the outfield this way, I think he kind of said no on Bader, right? So it seems like the outfield might be set this way. Dave has dropped hints about getting young guys in there, and Crawford seems like he's closest. If we realize that Suarez is going to go, and they're expecting Wheeler back at some point, and Painter is also around, and they've got enough. They've got Taijuan Walker. They've got enough people to start games, and there's enough bullpen pieces to field a bullpen at the beginning of the year. If the only question is who's going to be the catcher, I don't know. What do you think of this team right now? This team won 96 games, won the division, outscored the Dodgers in the division series, even though the Dodgers went on and won the whole thing. And you mentioned it; they held Ohtani to 1 for 18 in that series. I mean, it's funny. Obviously, you don't want them to lose. There's disappointment, but like, I didn't think, oh man, they got run out of the building or they weren't ready. They were toe to toe with the Dodgers, and those games went. We saw the way some of those games ended. All that to say, blah blah blah. The bullpen moves, the outfield moves. Real Muto still out there. Is this team better?
Ooh, I don't know if I'd say better.
Are they worse?
They're different, right? You addressed concerns, but I don't know if it made you a better overall unit, right? Especially if you don't bring back JT. I think if you're running out there with whoever's left, whether it's Mitch Garver or Victor Caratini or insert generic 36-year-old catcher that's not JT Realmuto, right? If you end up with someone lesser than JT, then you're talking about, okay, how stable do we feel about the pitching staff now that we don't have that guy who everybody on the pitching staff has attributed their success on some level to him being behind the plate and being their battery mate. I think if you bring back JT, I think they're better, but barely. Like better suited for success, even if I don't think they're going to win more than 96 games in the regular season, right? I don't see them suddenly being a 100-win team with what they have, but I think that keeping the ball on the ground in the bullpen is huge, and they have a lot of guys under team control who can do that now. That makes me feel good. The defense alone in the outfield makes me feel good, and it's hard for me to conceptualize how much Bader meant, even though I watched it, right? Like, how much better were they? But I think they were still on pace for 93 wins before the Bader trade, and they won 96. It's like, okay, yeah, he made you better, but you were probably in the exact same position you were with or without him. When you look at the end of the day, you might not have felt as good about them going into the playoffs without him. But
yeah, I think it's going into the playoffs and matching up game to game. I'd rather have him out there.
Yeah, of course. I'd say overall better, no, but a significant drop off, no either. I mean, you're still looking at a mid-90s win baseball team as they're currently constructed, and you hope that this flyer on Garcia works out, or that one of these young guys, whether it's Otto Kemp or Gabriel Rincones from AAA, if he comes up and can make an impact, or Sosa figures out how to play left field, or they're a late signing like Miguel Andujar comes in on a 1-year deal and is your platoon partner for March, that almost makes me feel better than Otto Kemp. And that's nothing against Kemp. I just think having somebody who's been established makes you feel more comfortable going into the season. So I'd say worse. No, but this is such a cop-out answer, but it feels the same. It feels the same with slight improvement in the margins. But could you ask for more from a 96 win team? I don't know.
Well, and that's the funny thing that you and I talked about a lot is that this is a 96 win team that's been in the playoffs for however many straight. Let me get it right. Their fourth straight playoff appearance, their second straight division title, their
increased wins every season during the regular season.
Yeah, I was going to say take out 2020. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight seasons of increased win totals. But I also thought there was, and holes to fill is the wrong thing because there's not actually holes. There's people there, but spots to improve on. I thought it was crazy that they won 96 games and were just as good as the Dodgers in the NLDS. And I felt when the postseason ended, that they had a lot of things they needed to improve. And I don't think they improved center field. And this is no knock on Justin Crawford, but he's a rookie who, from what I've read, and I can only go off of this, people are unsure if he's good enough to play the difficult position it seems like he's going to end up playing. And I don't think they improved the other spot where they made a move. And I think 2 of the 4 infielders have plateaued, and we know what they are. That's fine, but I don't think those spots aren't going to improve. And they haven't done anything with the catcher spot, which I think even if you bring the guy back, he's got to improve.
Yep.
You lose one of the starters, and the bullpen, I think in total, if you got a whole season of Alvarado back, a whole season of Duran, the step from Strom to Keller, the bullpen is really looking good. But I mean, and you and I talked about how Taijuan Walker, I think he's the object of a lot of fans' ire. But if they had 6 starters start 152 of their 162 games last year. That includes Ranger Suarez. So you put Walker in that. Who knows with Wheeler if Painter's part of that? I just don't think some of the certainty is there that's going to be there last year. And you're also talking about some of their star players are in their mid-30s. I don't know. I'm a little concerned that this team that has done all those things and has a lot of the same pieces. I don't know if you know me, I'm not usually that normally pessimistic Philly fan. I just think I'm waiting for the rug to get pulled out.
Yeah, it's the concern makes a lot of sense. It's there and it's valid. I think that they're finally doing something that fans have wanted them to do, and fans seem to be pushing back against it. It's like, hey, when are we going to call up these young guys? Hey, we're going to put Crawford in center field. That's not good enough, actually.
Right.
Please don't do that, right?
Yeah.
When are we going to see Andrew Painter? Well, he's going to be in the opening day rotation. I don't know if he's ready yet. Like, that's when you feel like your window's closing, even if like the organization is not looking at it like they have to win right now. Yeah. And I think fans think that the window closes every year that they don't win the World Series, right?
Right.
You and I spoke about the window feels like it's the next 2 years, the current window, because you have long-term contracts. And if you get young players, you can still compete even if Harper and Turner are and they're in their mid to late 30s at that point, right? But you need all those other things to start to work. So they're going to give it a chance, which is what everybody wants. But to me, I'm not worried because they're a team that's willing to go do it when they need to. And Dombrowski is a guy that is willing to go do it when he needs to, right? If they get 3 months into the season, they're like, the outfield is god awful. I just have faith that they're going to go find somebody. It might not be the perfect answer. It might not be a Cody Bellinger or getting Bader again, or it might not be trading for whoever the Marlins want to cut, or it's there. I think that they are a smart enough front office and a aggressive enough front office to go make moves. But the people who want you to go sign every $30 million free agent, like they've done that already. This is the team. And now you need to build up in those margins. And obviously I know this is generic, but time will tell if they did enough this season. And I think we're going to be having a similar conversation in July that we do every year, but that's what happens in competitive baseball. It doesn't matter how good you are. There's always a chance to improve. The Dodgers literally moved all of their rotation to the bullpen because their bullpen sucked so much last year. And they immediately went out and addressed it by signing Edwin Diaz. So like the World Series champions felt like they had a big hole and they addressed it. The 96 win Phillies who lost to them should feel the same way and comfortably feel the same way.
And if the Phillies get relative health from their starting rotation and Painter doesn't implode from, that step from the minors to the majors, they're going to be in contention again.
Exactly. And I've always looked at it like we talked back in the day, right? Center field and shortstop used to be defense first. Well, if I'm going center field defense first because Crawford plays well and he ends up hitting okay, I know he's a big ground ball guy, but if he's hitting 8th or 9th in your lineup, giving you some speed at the bottom to turn it over, kind of like what Stott has done at times, I'm okay with that if everybody else is doing their job. It's if Garcia isn't hitting well and Bohm looks like last year's Bohm instead of 2 years ago Bohm, and Stott can't figure out how to hit lefties and you go into a platoon with it, then the center field looks like it's not enough, right? But if these other established guys do what they're supposed to do, you can live with Garcia figuring it out in the major leagues. But will they have that kind of patience in that kind of time?
Yep.
Johnny, is there anything that we missed as far as I know they'd made some minor league catching signings. They traded for Kyle Backus, who's a weird kind of sidearm submarine reliever who also has a high ground ball rate, but nothing else of note yet for the Phillies outside of those rumors that they might be talking to Tatsuya Imai, the Japanese hurler who has a few days left before his window closes.
No, to me, it's all about what they do at catcher and then what they either announce or when, who earns what coming out of spring training with Painter, Crawford, and young guys. Or if they make some sort of surprising move that slots someone in or, swaps out a current major leaguer for a different one.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing big to dive into just yet. But some moves still nonetheless to talk about. That bullpen revamped. I think we're going to like a lot of what we see from them. It also takes pressure off of Ryan Kerkering. I think we should probably going into this season be at the point where we're not worried about that as much. But the way that the season ended, I understand why you want to at least start the year with taking a little bit of pressure off the young kids. So a lot of stuff for the Phillies to watch closely. The posting windows for the Japanese stars close in the next 2 weeks. So off chance they're involved in any of those big stars coming over, make sure you keep a close eye on Phillies news for that. And make sure you keep a close eye for us out here on socials. If you've been watching at the bottom, you can subscribe, brand new podcast. So all the subscriptions, all the likes, all the reviews, all the comments do mean a lot. You can join the conversation. Tell us what you want to hear on X or Twitter at Bro Glove Podcast, on Instagram at Brotherly Glove Podcast, and on YouTube at Brotherly Glove Pod. We appreciate it. Johnny, any last words before we wrap things up?
No. I'm looking forward to week 18. I want the Eagles to go for the 2 seed, and hosting the Packers in round 1 would be so much better than hosting the Rams.
Couldn't agree more. So big things to look for. Sirianni hasn't announced it yet, but keep it locked on our socials. Our Twitter handles are right here if you haven't seen as well. So make sure you go follow us there for all your latest and greatest when it comes to Phillies news and Phillies breakdowns, because we'll give you the best analysis we can with our 30 years of media industry experience and damn near 80 years of fandom combined. So, Johnny, this was a good one, man. Great start, and hopefully the fans love it and they can stick with us in the coming weeks. In case you forgot, you've been listening to the Brotherly Glove Podcast. 2 brothers from Philly bringing the passion and the experience and the data and anything and everything you could dream of, giving you an alternative to the sloppy here out on the airwaves at times. We appreciate the love. We appreciate you guys. This is a show that loves sports, loves to talk about it, loves to be about it, and doesn't love hating on all you guys like some of those other places out there. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully you give us that subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think of the first couple episodes, and we'll be back next week talking week 18 for the Eagles. Until next time, peace out.
See you.